the cover for Spider-Man 55?
No, I did not.
It's all black, and it's by Patrick Gleason. It's all black, and then Spider-Man's like, it's a side profile of him, and he's made out of all webs.
Oh wait, yeah, I did see that. All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a takeover edition of LRM Mornings, where the veteran cast of the Comic Source. I am Manny.
The professionals are taking over.
That's right, and I am joined by obviously.
Yep, this is Jace from the Comic Source, and I'm so professional. I don't even know if this is being released as just audio or is it audio and video.
Actually, it's just audio.
Okay, so if I make funny faces, nobody really cares. Yeah, we set up backgrounds on our Zoom, and it doesn't even matter. It's really audio. But at least Manny. So for those of you that can't see, Manny's chilling in the bat cave. I can see that.
That's right.
I see the dinosaur behind him. No Penny in that background though.
And Jace is chilling in the stars.
That's right. I'm hanging out in space. Hanging out.
Well, the good news today is that you won't have to hear the voice of Kyle or Nick or any of those other guys.
Yeah, that's going to be a good day for you. We're starting it off right. To celebrate our 46th president taking office, we're gonna give you the dulcet tones of Manny and myself instead of those usual yahoos you have to listen to.
Oh, by the way, instead of maybe LRM Mornings, go listen to the Comic Source. You're gonna get a lot more bang for your buck over there.
Yeah. So what do you want to chat about first? I mean, I can talk comics all day, but
I know we can talk for hours. So actually, I thought that the big story that we can talk about, and it's not even a big story, but it'd be an interesting conversation, is that Batman the animated series, they're talking about possibly bringing that back for HBO Max. So this comes from the Fat Man Beyond podcast from Mark Bernardin, who in it said, and I quote, it's actually on our site, HBO Max is looking at making a Batman the animated series sequel that they want to continue that forward. And then Kevin Smith added by saying, I'm not involved, but I too have heard this, and from reliable people. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Kevin Smith and Mark Bernardin are in that world of Hollywood, so they would be in a position to know. But here's what I think about it. So Batman the Animated Series is beloved, and rightly so. Mm-hmm. It brought a lot of people to Batman. It converted a lot of people into Batman fans. But when you talk about a property that is this influential and this important, if you bring it back, you have to be so careful to do it right. Because if you do it incorrectly, if you don't nail it, the backlash is going to be huge, because not only do you have people that know the quality of that original series and are going to expect the same, it's also the fact that a lot of these people have so much invested in that series for reasons of nostalgia, so that they, in their minds, and we all do this, when we think back on things in the past that we loved, we elevate them in our minds to make them even better than they were at the time. And so the bar is raised, right? So you may, like, objectively come out with a sequel that's just as good as the first one. You're still going to have a hard time getting people to believe that it's as good as the first one. Because in their mind, they're going to have built it up that the first one is untouchable, right? So you almost have to make it better than the first one, which that was lightning in a bottle when they created the first one. That, it just, everything came together from Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, Kevin Conroy, everything, the art style. And, I've heard some comic creators, and again, it's not just us fans that were influenced by it. There's a lot of creators right now, especially artists that are working in the industry, that were influenced by this. And, I've heard a lot of them, this news came out today and they're like, no, I don't want to see it come back, because I don't want to see the sort of crappy computerized, animation of today because I don't think it'll live up to the legacy of the animated series. I mean, the animated Batman the animated series brought you to comics, made you a Batman fan. How do you feel about it?
You know, it's I don't want I as much as I love it, I don't want to see it back. The reason being is I consider the sequel to this to be Batman Beyond, and I thought that was done really well. This is the older Batman. This introduced us to Terry McGinnis in that world, the futuristic Gotham, and I'm gonna be honest. I even thought that their kind of sequel to it, The Adventures of Batman and Robin. I didn't enjoy that as much as the original ones, the original season of it. There was something about the art style that changed a little bit, and then the stories they didn't feel as impactful as those first ones. I mean, the show is so character driven, that some of those episodes necessarily didn't have too much action. There's some episodes that are just iconic, like Almost Got Him, where you have a group of villains sitting around a table at a bar discussing how they almost caught Batman. Or the Robin's Reckoning, his backstory on how he was one of the Flying Graysons, and everything that happened with his family. A Heart of Ice is one of my favorite episodes, with really kind of the elevation of Mr. Freeze and his story of not really being a villain. If you really think about it, he's trying to save his wife. He's a villain, duh, but you kind of you feel for the guy a little bit. Because even Batman, he tells Batman, he's like, "Look, man, my issue's not with you. If you don't fight me, I got no problem with you." Things like that have been able to have, like, people like Dr. Andrea Lettermanti and Brian Ward have an extensive podcast where they were able to break down every episode and 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 really analyze Bruce Wayne and all of the other rogues and all the other characters because of how brilliantly it was done. I just don't know how well does that translate in 2021, 2022, and going forward. I think you're right. Even if Bruce Timm comes back and they bring back the whole gang and everyone, can it really? What more is there to tell?
Yeah, I think you almost have to. So I get it, right? Like Warner Brothers, AT&T especially, they're hurting, man. They're hurting for money bad. So I think, yeah, they're trying to cash in on the popularity of Batman the Animated Series. They're trying to catch lightning in the bottle again and do something that can be an infusion of fans. And it's not. They may not be thinking of it. Okay, we're gonna look to get those same fans of Batman the Animated Series back. They want the young kids now that will grow up and become Batman fans. So I get that, but the way you do that is you evoke something that already has a pretty big fan base. Oh, this is going to be in the style of a Batman the Animated Series. So they're going to try to use like the same name or whatever. But here's the thing: like, if you're going to do something new, then just do something new and don't call it Batman the Animated Series. They kind of want to have their cake and eat it too, right? They're going to do something new, but use the old. So what I think they should do is just, like, don't use the old name. Don't call it Batman the Animated Series. Just create something new. And if you want it to be in the same style as Batman the Animated Series, then by all means, like, do the
Right.
old school animation style, even though it's more expensive. Try to get A-list actors. Like, by all means, try to do the best job you can, but don't call it Batman the Animated Series. Call it, I don't know, just call it like the Batman, or
That
you
one's
know,
been done. I like that one.
or call it, I don't know, Batman animated. I mean, there's any number of names you could come up with. Call it call it Gotham animated. I don't know. You could come up with a lot of different names. Call it what about the Legend of Batman?
Yeah.
There's a lot of names you could come up with. Don't call what you don't want to do. I just don't think you want to call it Batman the Animated Series, because you're inviting yourself for the comparison, and I just don't think it will ever compare favorably because of the nostalgia factor. That's like the biggest thing. So I don't think it's a good idea. But you know what? I fully expect Warner Brothers to make it. I fully expect them to call it the animated series. I fully expect them to the powers that be at Warner Brothers. They just don't, maybe understand. So I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a little trivia for everyone. This is the series where Harley Quinn first made her appearance. It wasn't in comic books. It wasn't in the traditional media. It was in one of my actually favorite episodes, Joker's Favor, where a guy is just having a bad day and he cuts off the wrong clown.
Yeah, and again,
So
that might be another reason they're looking to, to reboot so they can catch lightning in a bottle again and get a new fifth pillar of the DC universe.
I just don't know what else you can do with it at this point. Like I understand, like you said, make an animated series, a Batman animated series. We all love that. We all love to see a Batman animated series, but leave that alone. That's treasure.
What about doing a Batman animated series that's R-rated in the same universe as the Harley Quinn HBO Max series?
That could work. I mean, they already have the voice actor for Batman.
Again, I think they're trying to probably capture the younger audience, though. So,
I mean, that would work. So, and since we're talking comics, I really wanted your opinion on something that was announced last week, and that is the Miles Morales Spider-Man Cologne Saga.
Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing about the original Clone Saga. It gets such a bad rap. And the thing about the original Clone Saga was, and again, this was the 90s, so the internet was just in its infancy, and there wasn't all this social media and the immediate like fan reaction kind of thing. Otherwise, I think the original Clone Saga ends up a lot different. Is it a terrible story and a terrible idea in and of itself? No. Was it super bloated and did it kind of hang on too long? Yes. And a lot of it had to do with the era. So for those not familiar, basically Peter Parker finds out he has a clone. And originally what Marvel was planning on doing was the Peter Parker that we had known. And this all stems from a story that was told around right around issue 150, 149, 150 of Spider-Man. And we were supposed to have found out that the Peter Parker that we knew from that time until we got into the Clone Saga, which I think was in like the 420s or so, 419, 420, somewhere in there, of Amazing Spider-Man. So for those nearly 300 issues, the Peter Parker that we thought was actually Peter Parker was the clone, and the other guy that was in stasis and was the clone was the real Peter Parker, right? So that's what we were told. And again, there's no internet, there's no social media, whatever. And the massive like backlash from fans was Marvel's like, they noped right out of that. They're like, nope, we're not doing that. And they flipped it back around and said, no, we were just kidding. Some villain manipulated the results and made us think that, but that's not really what happened. People just weren't ready for that. And in a way, it was sort of one more day before one more day. So if you're not familiar with One More Day, that was when Joe Quesada came in, when he was editor-in-chief of Marvel, and said, hey, the fact that Peter is married and has Mary Jane and all that, it's taking us away from the core of the character. It doesn't have the angst he used to have. It's limiting us on stories that we want to tell. So we need to get rid of that. And there was a storyline where Aunt May died, and in order to save Aunt May, Peter Parker had to make a deal with Mephisto, and Mephisto's punishment, or what he took from Peter Parker as a price to keep Aunt May from dying, was he took away his marriage, erased that marriage from existence. And fans threw a fit. They threw an absolute fit. But Quesada stuck by his guns, and they've never been married since. So this was that like ahead of its time. Like people at Marvel, some people at Marvel were already thinking, yeah, Spider-Man shouldn't be married. What's a way that we can get rid of it? Well, that's how they were gonna do it. So we're gonna find out Mary Jane had married the clone, and now we got this original Peter Parker back who never married her, and we can tell whatever. But like I said, the backlash was bad, so Marvel like noped right out of it. So the original Clone Saga, it had some good ideas, but it also had some problems, and it went on way too long, and it was really bloated. There's all kinds of one-shots, and it was the 90s, so you had all kinds of like foil covers and gimmicks and whatever. So in a way, even though it wasn't a bad idea for a storyline, in a way, part of the problem was it was a product of the 90s when you had all those kind of bloated, you know, variant covers and poly bags and, you know, foil this and die cut that and whatever. And there's there's quite a few comic fans, people, comic journalists and stuff that cover it, that see the industry making some of those same mistakes now. We have, you know, variant covers and gimmicks.
Oh
and
yeah.
Now it's not just variant covers, but like variant covers where it's 1 of 50 or 1 of 25. You got to, or 1 of 100. You got to order 100 of the regular cover in order to get one of this variant. And it just to inflate sales numbers and whatever. It's artificially propping up the market. So if it wasn't for that, if it wasn't for the fact that the industry is sort of falling back into some of the bad habits they had in the 90s, I wouldn't be so worried about doing a Miles Morales Clone Saga. Because here we go again. I'm like, you're going to have 1,000 variant covers and polybag and whatever. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like any comic story or, you know, any comic event. If the story's good, then, you know, I'll be in on it. And I think Saladin Ahmed has been telling some good stories in Miles Morales Spider-Man. The art has been kind of inconsistent on it. And I wonder when we got the announcement that we're going to have a Miles Morales version of the Clone Saga, is the reason for that the sort of having these lesser artists on it because the main artists are over there working on Clone Saga. So I'm not opposed to it. I mean, I lived through the first Clone Saga, and anybody who's a Spider-Man fan and they're going to see those words and they're going to kind of groan and roll their eyes, just because it has such a, you know, bad connotation. But I think if they don't try to go too big, which again, it's Marvel, and oftentimes they do, if they don't try to make it too bloated and the story's good, it might not be the worst thing in the world. We've already seen, if anybody out there is listening has already been reading Miles Morales Spider-Man, you already know we've already seen this clone, and I imagine that's the clone that it's gonna show up that he's gonna be fighting against. So yeah, it's not the worst idea in the world, but at the same time, I do wish they'd do something sort of new and different and innovative. And if you're going to pull something, so here we are talking about Batman the Animated Series. They're trying to go back and pull from something that's great. Right. And we're saying, no, don't do it. Don't ruin it. Now we're talking about going back and pulling from something that makes people groan. And we have the same reaction. No, don't do it. Don't do it. I mean, maybe it could end up being better than the original. So, I mean, it's all going to boil down to how good the story is. But
yeah, we'll see. We'll see how good that is.
I mean, they're calling it Clone Saga, so clearly they're trying to evoke some sort of response.
Of course. Or are we going to get like a punk rock version of Miles Morales too? Then.
God, there's so many versions. Yeah, that's the other thing. I was talking. I've talked before about how I don't like the fact there's so many symbiotes running around because I feel like it dilutes them. I'm starting to feel the same way about Spider-Man. Like in the Amazing Spider-Man title recently, we had all these sort of Spider-Man the heroes, like people that were inspired by Spider-Man that were trying to come and help him save the day. And you don't realize how many there are until they all get together. You had Julia Carpenter, who used to be Spider-Woman and is now the new Madam Web. You had Aranya, you have Silk, you have Spider-Gwen, you have Miles Morales, you have Jessica Drew Spider-Woman. It's like, dude, like it takes away from the specialness of a character when you have 75 derivative versions, kind of like when Wolverine died.
Oh yeah,
there were like 9 other Wolverines, so you didn't even miss.
So this is a perfect segue now that we're talking about bringing things back, old things, and then also the amount of Spider-Man that we have in the world, because today we got an email and it was announced kind of the new era of the What If series of types of books from Marvel, with what if Peter Parker became Venom? And this is going to be written by Chip Zdarsky and by Pasquale Ferry. Now, yes, I understand Peter Parker did don the suit, but the whole point of the series is what happens if Peter Parker would have embraced the symbiote? What would have happened if he would have allowed it to really become part of him? And so then what happens when he has to come face to face with his Hobgoblin? And this is going to be a 4-part series, and it kicks off in April.
Well, I think what happens
thoughts?
is Hobgoblin gets his ass handed to him.
Probably.
Probably what happens. So yeah, the one thing that I wonder about is, so Spider-Man has gone on record as saying he kind of knew almost from the beginning that there was something wrong and it wasn't just a regular costume. He kind of caught on, at least subconsciously. And they've gone back and told other stories in that era that we weren't privy to at the time, because he really wasn't in the symbiote costume for that long when you talk about how many actual issues before he realized something's wrong, went to the Fantastic Four, shot it with the sonic gun, trapped it or whatever. So that's what I'm going to be curious about. Like, is Zdarsky going to go, okay, he always knew and he makes a decision, I'm going to be a more effective crime fighter and I think I can control this thing and let it bond with him? Or is it going to be that the suit just, he doesn't get to Mr. Fantastic in time and the suit bonds with him, and if he is separated from it, he dies or what have you? That's what I'm going to be interested in. As far as like the power level, I mean, I just think he would have become like uber hero. He would have been one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel universe. So I don't know.
Well, what an interesting quote that he gives out is that he says that readers are going to be amazed at what Marvel lets us do. So I'm super curious at what that means, and really, because I mean we've seen like Superior Spider-Man and things like that where I mean, it's Dr. Ock, but it's still a Spider-Man regardless.
Yeah,
so
the other thing that has me worried, so I didn't used to be a big Zdarsky fan, because
we were just talking about this.
A few things that I read by him I thought were awful. Like I couldn't even. I think I got through like one issue and one page of Howard the Duck, and I was so angry. Like the book was so garbage. One of the worst comics I've ever read. And then people were like, "Oh, Zdarsky," and I always felt like, man, he's trying so hard to be funny. It's a big turnoff. And then I started hearing other things about, oh, he's doing this series and it's great, and he's doing that and it's great. And so I had been reading Charles Soule's Daredevil and loving it, and he got moved off the book before he still had stories to tell, and it happens, and Charles was professional about it. But for Zdarsky, that didn't sit right with me either. But then everybody's telling me, oh, he's so good, I didn't want to hear it. But then I did start reading his Daredevil, and I'm like, this is pretty good. He's not necessarily treading new ground here, but he's doing it. He's telling these sort of similar stories of past. The stories are similar to past Daredevil stories, but he's telling them in a new and interesting way. And I also read his Life of Spider-Man series, which, if you're not familiar, that was basically, it took place over 6 decades, and it was kind of in real time. So Spider-Man was actually getting older. So it starts when he's a teenager, and then the issue 2 he's in his 20s and 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, so on and so forth. And that was by Zdarsky, and I heard a lot of people talking about how great that series was. And then I read it, and it didn't make me go back and think, okay, I was right in the first place. Zdarsky's not a good writer, because technically it was written well, but I just don't care for his take on Spider-Man. I didn't care for the tone of the book. I thought it was really very cynical, and it didn't focus on the positive, which I kind of feel like that's what Spider-Man to me, Peter Parker to me, he's kind of like the Wally West of the Marvel universe, where he even though he goes through so much, he's always and not that he's a positive person, but I feel like he never gives up. And so that's what's positive about him. He always rises to the occasion. And I felt like Zdarsky sort of missed the boat on that. And it was a little too cynical in tone for me. So now I'm like, okay, I hear Peter Parker. I hear he bonds with the Venom symbiote. What I'm worried is that it's going to be Peter doing a heel turn. Is that the term from wrestling?
Yeah, heel turn.
Yeah. So that's where I'll be like, I'll nope right out of that. I won't have anything to do with it. I won't read it if that's the case. So yeah, I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, with any book that we cover, we can speculate all we want, but until we read 1 or 2 issues, then we'll give our real final opinions, which obviously you can do by listening into the Comic Source, which you can obviously find at LRMonline.com, which we will gladly continue to plug as much as we can while we're on here. You know what? Actually, I think that's all the time we got. You got anything else?
Yeah, actually, one last thing before we jump off here. So later, well, actually, by the time this is released and you hear this, my episode with Jason Inman will be out. Ooh. He is formerly of DC All Access, where most people know him from. He also has his own podcast called Geek History Lesson. He's also a writer for some television shows that he's working on that can't say what they are. They haven't been released yet. But he's also a comic creator. He writes comics. He's done 2 volumes of his Jupiter Jet series. He's done another one called Science. Well, he has a new Kickstarter that just launched on Tuesday, January 19th. Funded in 11 hours. Like, so happy and proud and excited for him because he's such a great guy and a great creator. So if you're listening to this, there's still about 24 hours left. If you're listening to this on Wednesday morning for the early bird, so you can go in and you can pledge and get a copy of his new upcoming book for a lower price. It's called Super Best Friend, and it's basically the story of like a sidekick, like sort of like a Jimmy Olsen kind of guy to Superman, who, it's updated for the modern age where, if Jimmy Olsen was Superman's best friend and Jimmy would be out there live streaming on TikTok or Twitch or whatever, the exploits of Superman. And while doing the live streaming, Maddie Moore is the guy's name. He accidentally reveals the secret identity of Captain Terrific, who is the hero of the story. What are the consequences of that? And, how does that affect their relationship and all that kind of stuff? So be sure you listen to the Comic Source episode with Jason. As I said, it's out later today. You can find a link to the show notes or a link in the show notes that will take you to the Kickstarter page, or just go to superbestfriendcomic.com and that'll take you there as well. So yeah, I highly recommend it. It sounds like it's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. I've had a chance to read about half of the first issue. There's going to be 3 issues. They're 48 pages each. And I've read the first 22 pages of the first issue, and it's great. Really, really recommend it. So definitely go and check that out, everybody. And even if you don't pledge, just share it on social media. That also helps get the word out.
Cool. Let everybody know where they can find you.
So the Comic Source can be found everywhere podcasts are. Spotify, Google Play, iTunes. Just do a search for the Comic Source. You'll find me there. iHeartRadio. Also on Twitter, just do a search for the Comic Source. Same thing on Facebook. Same thing on Instagram. You can find me there. And if you just use one of the podcast apps on your phone, just do a search for the Comic Source. You'll find me pretty much anywhere. Social media or podcasts can be found. And we put out a lot of content, multiple episodes a day most of the time. And we love to talk comics, and we love to interact with fans on social media and creators as well. So I always have creators picking my brain or coming on the show to do interviews and all kinds of stuff like that, as well as aspiring creators. So we're always happy to help signal boost if you have a project and things like that. So love to have you come join the conversation.
Awesome. And I am, of course, Manny Gomez. You can find me on Instagram at riddlemetthis_510, as well as on Twitter. You can find me at LRM_Emmanuel. Don't forget to check in on all of our other fabulous podcasts like Breaking Greek. We already talked about the Comic Source, Netflix and Chill, as well as all of our awesome interviews that we have on our site, as well as all the great news content that we are uploading as it comes out. All right. Hope everybody has a good day. What's up?
Yeah, and be sure you guys tell Kyle and Nick when they're back about how much better we are at this.
Oh yeah, so much better. You get so much more comic book insight than just talking about how good a Marvel movie is, or Star Wars, or just talk about how good Star Wars is. It's all right. Well, we also do not agree with a lot of the stuff Warner Brothers is doing, but they haven't made us mad today. All right, take care.
Bye, everybody.